Every age of gaming has its trends, and these are always reflective of what the technology allows. For example, in the early 2010s, when the tech finally reached that level, we saw a massive increase in open-world games. In the mid-2000s, when cleaner graphics and widened multiplayer access became normalized, so did the amount of FPS games. Even past the technology though, every era of gaming has a particular subgenre that gains popularity in that time period. In the late 90s and early 2000s, it was RTS games and RPGs. In the late 2010s, we saw a lot of love for Souls-like games, with games like Sekiro and Bloodborne, which capitalized on the formula put in place by Dark Souls. And in this modern age of the early to mid 2020s, we have our own trends that are unfolding in front of us. The gaming trend in 2024 seems to be the games she's playing with you, lil bro, sending mixed signals and shit. What am I saying? We don't get any bitches. Were we meant to suffer alone? As you can tell from the title of this video, the fad that we seem to be having is remakes. Sure, there have been some remakes in the past, but it seems like we have more remakes coming out in the past few years than ever before. Just to name a few, we had remakes for the Spyro trilogy, Shadow of the Colossus, even Medieval got one. And some of the more popular remakes include Resident Evil 2, 3, and 4, the Final Fantasy VII remake, the Silent Hill 2 remake which just came out, and now they're remaking Metal Gear Solid 3, and there will probably be even more remakes in the future. But why are remakes becoming all the rage? Very underrated game, by the way. Is this a good thing? And why does it work in this industry but not in others, like movies for example? Well, I'm not gonna beat around the bush and then give you some bipartisan answer at the end of the video, like it depends, or if you like them then buy them, if you don't then don't buy them. I'm gonna tell you straight up, because honesty is the name of the game on this channel, even if it ruffles some feathers. So full honesty and transparency, I'm gay. I actually enjoy and appreciate the remake trend that we're going through, and while I think this trend will die out like everything else, we should enjoy it while it's still here. There are so many games that people won't get to experience because they're on older platforms and hard to access. So many stories that deserve to be heard despite being from a previous generation. And remakes allow for that gap to be bridged between modern players and classic games. Now, I can understand some of the disdain for remakes, like saying it's a cheap cop-out for easy money from studios that seem to lack originality, but I don't fully agree with this. Yes, from a writing perspective, a remake is substantially easier to do than a brand new game, but the main attraction with games is the gameplay experience and not necessarily the story. If you care about stories, then girl, go read a book, girl. Yes, queen. Period. This might be a hot take, but let me explain myself. When it comes to books, the main attraction is stories. When it comes to movies, I would still argue writing is king, but it's not 100% of the picture like it is in books. You also have cinematography, the soundtrack, and acting complementing the writing, which allows for less pressure on the writing itself. Now, movies and books, while immersive, are not interactive. Games are. And this significantly reduces the need for the writing to be a complete standout element. Case in point, there are so many games out there with subpar writing status that are revered as legends, and some of the greatest games ever made, because their gameplay and worlds make up for the lack of writing prowess. The same is not true for books or movies, where every great universally revered book or movie always has to have amazing writing. Now, the point of me saying this is to establish that going through the same story again in a game is not that monotonous or boring, since a new gameplay experience can significantly change how the game feels. For example, you might have one Dishonored playthrough where you are violent and kill everyone, and you might have another where you decide to be a stealthy pacifist. And while the campaign will remain relatively the same, your experience with the game will be completely different. When it comes to remakes, they can have the same story as the original game, but with modern systems and new technology. This can make the game feel completely different, and so the audience doesn't feel tired from hearing the same story again, because the games feel completely distinct from each other. That, in a nutshell, is why remakes in games are acceptable and even encouraged by the majority of players. But what about movies? Why does everyone get mad, especially in recent times, when studios decide to reboot a franchise? Well, the nuanced answer is that games have had a lot more innovation in the past 40 years than movies. The jump in gaming from 1984 to 2024 is massive, but that jump is not the same for movies since film is a much older art form. There are so many movies from well before 1984 that still feel timeless and perfect as they are. Remakes or reboots for movies usually suffer because they don't feel needed, since the original is perfectly fine and still acceptable for modern times. The only acceptable remakes seem to be those that are done for significantly older movies, like Nosferatu for example, which is a silent film from over 100 years ago. There has been a significant change in the movie landscape since then, which is why we deem a Nosferatu remake good and necessary, whereas not enough time has passed for a newer movie to warrant a remake. If I have to give an analogy, and this is a generalization, remaking a movie past 1984 is like remaking a game on the PS4 or PS3 for modern consoles. There hasn't been that big of a jump since those consoles to warrant a remake for most games. A PS1 or PS2 game getting a remake though, that makes much more sense. Now obviously there are some outliers to this analogy. I can already sense somebody typing up a generational rant in the comments saying, "Dude, the Dune remake was totally necessary and that was from the 1980s. Your analogy is flawed and superfluous. What an embarrassing oversight from an ultra-crepidarian simian who posts his opinions online." And you know what? I don't give a rat's ass, but I think the vast majority of you intellectuals can grasp the point I'm making. And if there's anything that Metal Gear Survive or the Silent Hill pachinko machines have taught us, it's that studios will milk any franchise until it bleeds. So if they're gonna force content out of a franchise regardless, then we might as well get a remake of a classic game. And while that original game may already be perfect on its own, if done right, it doesn't hurt to experience it in a new light. In some of my super old videos, like when I really had no idea what I was doing on YouTube, I still don't, but like a year or two ago, you can catch me crashing out over Konami and other studios not remaking old games and instead just hogging those franchises to release bullshit like Metal Gear Survive. It was bad, and I am still pissed that the only way to play the original Silent Hill games is to go through an emulator, because these lazy fucks won't just put it in a basic HD remaster and collect the freest money of their lives. I'm getting worked up right now just thinking about it because so many of my friends can't experience Silent Hill because these corporate geezers don't know what a remaster is. Konami, don't come to the office tomorrow. But for legal purposes, jokes aside, it's nice to see lazy companies like Konami following in Capcom's footsteps and embracing the remake mindset. I honestly hope Bethesda does the same and remakes Morrowind or Oblivion. They'd probably fuck that up too though, let's be honest, because my hopes for Elder Scrolls 6 are lower than a nun's body count. Okay, that's a terrible joke and nothing but respect to the religious folk out there, but I think that analogy gets the point across. Remakes are a safe bet, and it's better for a studio to release a remake of an old game rather than to make a new one that's trash. To the people complaining about remakes, what's your deal? Were you born before 2003, Unk? You probably rave about the good old days when Walmart was 24-hour, Amazon didn't have sales tax, and when they were separate but equal. But just because you got Unk status and got to experience an original game when it came out, doesn't mean other people shouldn't get that luxury. Get out of here, old head! If you're born before 2003, we gotta get your geriatric ass into a retirement home on Diddy. I was born before 2003.
I'm 30. Well, in November I'll be 30.
But I hope the point of this video, past the jokes and edgy humor, has been clear. We're in an age of remakes, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. especially in gaming, where there have been leaps and bounds of improvements over the past few decades. Many of the bangers on PS1 and PS2 are coming back, and maybe in 5 to 10 years, we'll see another trend for games on the PS3 and 360. And I'm not opposed to it as long as gaming continues to make significant jumps in what's possible with the technology. So here's to hoping that more classics get remakes like the Fatal Frame games, Metal Gear Solid, and the rest of the Silent Hill catalog from 1 to 4. And there are so many more games that deserve a remake out there. And if Konami ditches remakes after Silent Hill 2's success, which wouldn't surprise me because they love self-sabotage, then something is gonna happen. I'm not even gonna specify good or bad because I don't even know, but something is going to happen. Because something always happens, that's just how the world works. I'm not even making a threat, I'm just stating a fact. But that's all I have. Thank you for watching. Please check out some of my other videos. Most of them are trash, but I think I got a few good ones here and there that you'll enjoy. Just to name a few that I'm actually proud of, The Downfall of Bethesda, Silent Hill 2 analysis, and my video game addiction video all took a lot of time, and I think you guys will actually enjoy those. But if you've made it this far, you're a real one, I love you, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.